Good afternoon. The time is 2 o'clock, and I'd like to call this hearing to order. I am Christy McGill, Deputy Superintendent for Educator Effectiveness and Family Engagement. With me today, I have IT David Monachino and also support in Las Vegas, Angie Castanedos. As we get started with the agenda, I'd like to share a few housekeeping items. While we're pleased to meet in person again, some participants may join our meeting virtually. As always, we ask for your patience and any technical difficulties we may encounter. I also want to remind our audience that workshops can be viewed via live stream with closed captioning. I'll remind participants to please turn off your microphone or mute yourself when you're not speaking, and remember to turn on your microphone or unmute when you'd like to make a comment. Of course, remember that you are on video and being broadcast via live stream on the Nevada Department of Education's website. Please make sure you have signed in, regardless of whether you intend to provide public comment. If you have indicated you'd like to provide public comment, please complete a comment card and submit it. Please make sure to note which workshop you would like to make comment on, or you can submit it to the Nevada Board Ed, which is NVBORDED@doe.nv.gov. Please make sure to note in the subject or body which workshop your comment addresses. The times marked on the agenda indicate we may not begin a workshop prior to the time listed. However, should an item take longer, we may begin a workshop later than the time listed. As a reminder, workshops are one of the first steps of regulatory processes. All of today's meeting materials are available on the department's webpage, and copies of the notice are available for review in the sign-in table. On to agenda item number 2, public comment period number 1. I will open the first period of public comment under agenda item number 2. Please note, I will limit your comments to 3 minutes. We will take public comment in the Carson City first. Seeing no comment, we will then move on to Las Vegas. Do we have any public comment in Las Vegas?
We have no public comments in Las Vegas.
Thank you. And do we have any written public comment?
We have no written comments at this time.
Thank you. Hearing none, we will move on to agenda item number 3, which we will now act upon regulation R071-21P. It is 2:03, and we're opening this. This is a notice of intent to act upon a regulation for the amendment of regulations pertaining to Chapter 3A5 of the Nevada Administrative Code to adopt regulations pertaining returning to learn after sustaining a head injury. I would like to welcome Dr. Higley, Director of the Office of Safe and Respectful Learning Environments, up to begin the regulation. Go ahead, Dr. Higley, when you're ready.
Dr. Kevin M. Higley, Director of the Office for Safe and Respectful Learning Environment, for the record. A regulation relating to public safety, establishing a policy concerning the treatment of injuries to the head that affect the ability of a pupil to learn and otherwise engage with his or her coursework, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. Legislative Council's Digest. Existing law requires the Superintendent of Public Instruction to adopt regulations prescribing a policy concerning the treatment of injuries to the head that affect the ability of a pupil to engage in his or her coursework at school. Existing law requires a public school to authorize a pupil who has sustained or is suspected of sustaining an injury to the head to receive reasonable accommodations that are based on peer-reviewed evidence. Existing law requires the superintendent to post the policy on an internet website maintained by the Department of Education. This regulation establishes such a policy, which includes, without limitation, 1, requirements for notifying the parent or legal guardian of a pupil and the public school in which a pupil is enrolled when the pupil sustains or is suspected of having sustained an injury to the head. 2, a requirement for a public school to use emergency management protocols to assist a pupil who is experiencing certain symptoms in being evaluated by an emergency medical provider. 3, procedures to be followed when a pupil sustains or is suspected of having sustained a head injury during an activity or event conducted or sponsored by a public school. And 4, a requirement to establish a pathway for a pupil who has sustained or is suspected of having sustained a head injury to return to full participation in the pupil's coursework, interscholastic activities, events, and other activities. One, in accordance with Section 6.5 of Senate Bill number 80, Chapter 319, Statute of Nevada, 2023, at page 1362, NRS 385.215, the Superintendent of Public Instruction hereby adopts the following policy concerning the treatment of injuries to the head that affect the ability of a pupil to learn and otherwise engage with his or her coursework at school, including, without limitation, a concussion of the brain. A, each public school staff notify a parent or legal guardian of a pupil enrolled at the public school if the pupil has sustained or is suspected of having sustained an injury to the head. On the premise of the public school staff during school hours, or 2, during an activity or event conducted or sponsored by the public school, the public school staff provide the parent or legal guardian of the pupil with a written or electronic copy of the policy adopted pursuant to this section. B, the parent or legal guardian of a pupil enrolled in a public school staff notify the public school at which the pupil is enrolled if the pupil has sustained or is suspected of having sustained a head injury, an injury in the head outside of school. The public school shall provide the parent or legal guardian of the pupil with a written or electronic copy of the policy adopted pursuant to this section. C, each public school shall establish and maintain procedures to notify the school nurse or a person designated to perform similar functions if a pupil enrolled at the public school has sustained or is suspected of having sustained a head injury to the head. D, each public school staff shall follow the emergency management protocols to assist a pupil in being evaluated by an emergency medical provider as soon as reasonably possible. If the pupil has sustained or is suspected of having sustained an injury to the head and is experiencing any of the following symptoms. 1, neck pain or tenderness. 2, seizure or convulsion. 3, double vision. 4, loss of consciousness. 5, weakness, tingling or burning in the arms or legs. 6, deteriorating use of consciousness. 7, vomiting. 8, severe or increasing headache. 9, increasing restlessness, agitation, or combative demeanor. 10, visible deformity of the skull. Or 11, any other concussing symptoms. Each public school should publish and disseminate to the staff of the public school guidance to be followed when a pupil sustains or is suspected of having sustained an injury to the head while participating in an activity or event conducted or sponsored by the public school. If a pupil enrolled in a public school sustains or is suspected of having sustained an injury to the head while participating in an activity or event conducted or sponsored by the public school, 1, the pupil must immediately be removed from the activity or event 2, the public school shall use a screening tool to evaluate whether a pupil who is returning to school needs further assessment by a provider of health care, and the public school shall require that a provider of health care acting within his or her scope of practice authorize the pupil to return to school. Each public school staff shall establish a pathway for a pupil enrolled in the public school who has sustained or is suspected of having sustained an injury to the head, regardless of whether the injury occurred at school or outside of school, to return to full participation in his or her coursework. Such a pathway must include, without limitation, stages based on the symptoms of the pupil through which the pupil must progress before being allowed to return to full participation in his or her coursework, interscholastic activities, or events or other school activities. Receipt of reasonable accommodations by the pupil in accordance with subsection 2 of section 6.5 of Senate Bill number 80, chapter 219, Statutes of Nevada 2023 at pages 1363, NRS 385.215. 2, as used in this section, A, emergency medical provider has the meaning ascribed to it in NRS 450B.199 as recommended by section 8 of Assembly Bill number 158, chapter 391, Statutes of Nevada 2023 at page 2287. B, provider of health care has the meaning ascribed to it in NRS 3885B.080 as amended by the section 7 of Senate Bill number 80, chapter 219, Statute of Nevada 2023 at page 1363. And now I will close the session.
Thank you, Dr. Higley. Not seeing any questions or comments, we're going to move to item number 3, to item number 4, which is public comment number 2. We have no public comment here in Carson City. Do we have any in Las Vegas?
We have no in-person or written comments at this time.
Thank you. Hearing no comments, we will move on to the item number 5, which is adjournment. I also want to make clear, I believe I opened this saying it was a workshop and actually it is a hearing. So I want to make that correction. And so for number 5, we are adjourned at 2:13 p.m. Thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate everyone's participation.